Sugar. Ah, honey, honey, you are my candy girl. Most of us have heard the Billboard Hot 100 #1 by the Archies from 1969. Maybe you remember the year that it debuted and made #1. It was the year that the Beatles had their last public performance, Concorde had their first test flight, and 350,000 fans gathered for Woodstock. The Vietnam War was raging and man had landed on the moon. Food culture in America was also changing during this time. In 1967, the microwave had made its debut, although by 1969, less than 1% of American households actually owned one. More and more prepackaged foods were making it onto the grocery store shelves, including brands like SpaghettiOs and Shake and Bake. And there was more frozen bread dough and pie dough, which took all the work out of the home baker's hands, but also all of the ingredients out of their control. Loaded with sugar desserts like the tunnel of fudge cake, pineapple upside down cake, and boxed cake mixes that had been around for 10 years or more by that point were also the thing to do and a way to end a dessert with a dinner with a sweet dessert treat. Rising fast food chains took more and more people away from home and out to eat. In 1968, Big Macs appeared for the first time on McDonald's menu for 49 cents each, and KFC, Burger King, Domino's, and Wendy's all had competing offerings that served up burgers and fries and pizza, so that the domestic housewife did not have to make dinner today. The shifts and changes in American lifestyles and eating habits began to take a gradual toll on the American citizen's health. In 1968, the Centers for Disease Control reported that only 1.62%, or 3.18 million people, had diabetes. But by 2018, that number had risen to 10.5%, or 34.2 million people with a diagnosis. A further 2.8%, or 7.3 million adults, meet the criteria for a diagnosis, but they were unaware that they had it. That's an increase of 38.32 million cases and approximately 12% over the last 50 years. Diabetes takes a massive toll on our health, and it's an economic burden to both the individual and the country. 37% of diabetes patients are estimated to have chronic kidney disease. It's the leading cause of new cases of blindness for adults aged 18 to 64, and it's the seventh leading cause of death in America. The total direct and indirect estimated costs of diagnosed diabetes in the United States in 2017 was $327 billion. Diabetes is a multifactorial disease process that's dependent on lifestyle choices, environmental pollutants, exercise, weight, sleep apnea, and genetics, among other things. But we also know that there is a really strong correlation between the amount of processed sugar that we eat and the likelihood of developing the disease. And while diabetes is one of the most trackable disease processes correlated with sugar consumption, it may also increase your risk of obesity, high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, poor oral health, cancer, depression, and aging. So why do I tell you those things? Because today, this lesson is about all things sweet. During the holiday season and under periods of intense stress, we tend to overindulge in sweet foods. So before we hit the holidays in earnest and lean into all the celebration confections, today we're going to discuss why we crave sweets, how much sugar hides in your food and where you can find it, what sugar does inside your body, what artificial sweeteners do to your health, how much sugar you should be consuming each day, nature's method for sugar control, and 8 quick tips for managing your sugar intake. America's love for sweet food has grown exponentially in the last 320 years. In 1700, sugar consumption was approximately 4 pounds per person per year. By 1800, that figure had risen to 18 pounds, and today that number looks more like 100 pounds per person per year, up to 300 pounds per person per year if you include all of the artificial sweeteners that we use in our food. We currently produce 74 pounds of beet sugar every year for every man, woman, and child, and the demand is such that that is only likely to increase. There are several reasons for our increase in consumption. One is the sheer availability and its inclusion in all of our foods. The other is our craving for it. Sugar cravings are clinically identifiable and can be present for many reasons. Many studies show that sugar releases dopamine and it activates the opiate receptors in our brain. And we see this when we do brain scans of somebody who has ingested crack cocaine and somebody who's ingested sugar. Their brain lights up in exactly the same pattern on the scans. Dopamine is our pleasure reward neurotransmitter, and because of these two things, eating sugar can lead us to compulsive behaviors like craving and binging, and then make us feel really, really crummy when we have to give it up. But it's not only pleasure and reward that causes us to crave sugar. Sugar gives us a quick pick-me-up when we're tired. So we know that people who are sleep deprived often end up eating 600 more calories per day than their well-rested counterparts. We also know that lack of protein and healthy fat in your diet can cause your blood sugar to yo-yo up and down. And as your blood sugar crashes and you start to feel horrible, you reach for more sugar to pick you back up again and even out all of your energy levels. Struggling with depression is another reason for craving sugar, because sugar raises your serotonin levels, which helps you to feel good. It regulates your emotions and influences how you interact with other people. I think this is one of the reasons why chocolate is so wildly popular when we don't feel well. It's full of sugar, so we know it raises our serotonin levels, and its cocoa content raises our dopamine levels to aid in concentration and stimulate our pleasure and reward centers. The other reason that you might find yourself craving sweets is because you're actually short on minerals. Minerals like chromium regulate cravings and manage our blood sugar levels. Iron deficiency is going to leave you tired and worn out and then reaching for more sugars. Magnesium, chromium, calcium, and zinc all help to regulate and manage your hydration levels. So if you get low on these minerals and you get dehydrated, what you actually might do is mistake your thirst for a sugar craving. Now, sugar is hidden absolutely everywhere. It is used ubiquitously in most prepackaged foods. In fact, there are over 50 names for sugar that you will see on ingredient labels. There was a documentary in 2014 called Fed Up, and it looked at the growing obesity statistics in America, and particularly the moneyed lobbying power of big sugar, which has nullified attempts by parents, schools, states, and Congress to provide healthier diets for children. So everything from baby formula to condiments and yogurt to pasta sauce and soda and juices contain added sugars. In fact, today, the big sugar industry is looking more and more like it's in the position of big tobacco was, 20 years ago when it came toppling down. And there's hopes to bring the sugar industry down in the same way, because their product is not healthy, but an awful lot of their lobbying keeps them in business. Now, we find ourselves in this position partly because of the changes made by President Nixon in the 1970s, right when everything was changing. He had this well-intentioned idea to remove food and hunger issues from the political agendas by keeping everyone well-fed. But that snowballed into this out-of-control, cheap food production that has fueled diabetes and poor health. He tasked the USDA with creating WIC, the Women, Infant, and Children program with subsidized food help. And what they did was they made these cheap, sugar-filled foods available to the masses so that nobody would go hungry. Then in 1966, high fructose corn syrup was created by Japan, and it was introduced to the USA in 1975. It was very cheap to make, so it made its way into nearly all of our foods. In the 1970s and the 1980s, the American Medical Association and the American Heart Association encouraged all of our citizens to go fat-free and low-fat in their diets, which they did. And so food manufacturers had to follow suit. And they replaced all the fat with sugar, because when they took the fat out, the food tasted like cardboard and nobody wanted to eat it. Then to top it all off and extend the shelf life, they removed all the fiber from the food too. The end result was this thoroughly adulterated processed food that was devoid of any nutrients, high in sugar, and often came with a side helping of trans fats. Today, 55% of the sweeteners that are used in our food and beverage manufacturing are made from corn, which is, if you remember, most likely genetically modified. Your body really doesn't know what to do with that. And the number one source of calories in America is soda. So how much is there really in your food? You can usually figure out how much there is by looking at the nutrition label. There are 4 grams of sugar in every teaspoon. So if you see that a serving of food contains 4 grams of sugar, then you know it has 1 teaspoon of sugar in it. There are 96 teaspoons in 1 pound of sugar. So here's the math for some common foods. Coca-Cola, 12-ounce Coke has 39 grams or 9 3/4 teaspoons of sugar. A Snickers bar has 30 grams or 7.5 teaspoons of sugar. Yoplait yogurt, 1 yogurt has 18 grams of sugar, which is 4.5 teaspoons. Yogurt is supposed to be a health food, right? Oreos, 2 Oreos contains 13 grams or 3.25 teaspoons full of sugar. Who in the world can only eat 2 Oreos? It takes some serious self-discipline to make that happen. And then over here we have granola bars by Nature Valley. 2 of those in 1 packet, that's 11 grams of sugar. 2.75 teaspoons of sugar there. And then lastly we have Prego Fresh Italian mushroom sauce. Half a cup of sauce contains 11 grams or 2 3/4 teaspoons of sugar. Before I learned how to eat clean, a typical lunch might have looked like this for me. I might have had a Coke or a Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper was really my favorite. I would have had a couple of slices of Sara Lee whole wheat bread. I would have had peanut butter. I would have had a tablespoon of jelly and a Snickers bar for dessert. That's a total of 86 grams of sugar. Now, if we divide that number by 4, we get the number of teaspoons of sugar in that meal. That meal contains a whopping 21.5 teaspoons of sugar. There are 96 teaspoons of sugar in a pound, so this meal contains almost 1/4 pound of sugar. Well, what's the problem with that? Well, it's the sheer quantity. Now, as a nutritionist, we recommend that you only consume 8 to 16 grams, that is 2 to 4 teaspoons of sugar per day. Drink 1 Coke and you've already more than doubled your daily intake without accounting for all the other places that sugar might be hidden, like your bread, your pasta, your dressings, etc. For reference, the average American consumes 19.5 teaspoons of sugar per day. That's 82 grams, which is over 3 times the recommended daily amount for women and kids from the USDA. That equals 66 pounds of sugar per person per year. So you see how easy it is to have that all add up. So what happens to sugar once it gets inside your body? Well, we've talked a little bit in the last few weeks about how the ingestion of 100 grams of sugar is enough to substantially reduce the capacity of your neutrophils, which are an essential part of your immune system. In fact, it can depress that activity for up to about 5 hours after you eat it. Refined sugars not only turn off all of the neutrophils and the ability to kill bacteria once they're inside your body, but they can also feed the bacteria, the yeast, the fungi, and the protozoa inside your body. So to get a grip on what happens to your body when you ingest sugar, I have these 3 pie charts in front of you. So let's compare. The first one on the left is eating 120 calories or 2 slices worth of white bread. The one in the middle is 120 calories worth of beer, and the one on the right is 120 calories worth of fruit juice or soda. So when your body takes in 120 calories of bread, you can see that lovely dark green right there. That is what your body is using. 80% of it is being used by your body for energy. 20% of it, that narrower, lighter green pie slice there, is going to hit the liver and become glycogen, which is stored for energy. About half a calorie is going to turn into VLDL. That's the kind of fats that can lead to cardiovascular disease. So in the middle one here, we'll see what happens when you drink 120 calories of beer. Your body takes in the ethanol, which is sugar, an acute toxin, and of the 120 calories, 96 of them are going to hit your liver. That's about 80%. So that lighter green takes over in this pie chart. Here it gets turned into an aldehyde, which crosses the proteins in the liver and it causes cirrhosis. Next, it makes lots of citrates, which creates tons of VLDL and builds fat inside the liver. When you drink 120 calories of soda or juice, this is what your body does with the fructose. It splits the calories right down the middle because 60 calories are glucose. Your body uses most of those 60 calories. This is now the pie chart on the right-hand side. About 12 of those calories are going to hit the liver, and then the other 60 calories go straight to the liver to be metabolized. So altogether, you've got 72 calories going straight to the liver to be metabolized. Now we know that insulin is not correctly stimulated in this instance, so your body's going to have to metabolize that all by itself. That creates uric acid. Uric acid causes gout and hypertension. It makes a lot of citrates, which makes a lot of VLDL and creates this non-alcoholic fatty liver. And we know that non-alcoholic fatty liver is one of the leading causes of needs for a liver transplant in the USA. So you can see after ingesting the fructose that is in these products, most of that metabolic burden rests with your liver. It can cause as much damage to your liver as drinking a beer. It's as toxic but without the buzz. And fructose goes into the liver where it's turned into fat and triglycerides, which means more fat throughout your body. Now you'll recognize fructose. Fructose is a fruit that is also in sugar, but I will make an argument later on that will show you that when you ingest the whole fruit rather than just taking the fruit juice, it's a lot kinder to your body in the long run. Why is all this so bad? Well, fructose, which we find most commonly in high fructose corn syrup, but also in agave syrup, elevates our uric acid, which is responsible for raising our blood pressure and potentially damaging our kidneys. Fructose tricks your body into gaining weight by fooling your metabolism. It turns off your appetite control. It doesn't appropriately stimulate insulin, which in turn does not trigger ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, and it doesn't stimulate leptin, which is your satiety hormone, which tells your body when you've had enough and when you should stop eating. You would have to eat 28 cups of lettuce to get the equivalent number of calories from a soda. Can you imagine doing that? Who wants to eat 28 cups of lettuce? You probably wouldn't. But we down cup after cup of sugary drinks without thinking twice or controlling how much we eat with it. And why? Because our brains think they're starving to death. It thinks your body is starving to death. All of these calories are hitting your body, but there's nothing to slow it down. Your insulin's not being prompted properly. And so your body is going, where are all the nutrients? I feel the calories, but I don't feel the nutrients. Most of the issues arise when we start separating our foods out into their individual parts instead of consuming the whole item. The same is true for any type of sugar. Sugar in nature is surrounded by fiber. Have you ever seen a sugar cane? There's a picture of it right here for you. It is virtually a stick. Take a moment and think about the sweet foods that you enjoy. An orange contains 80 calories. 14 grams of that is sugar and 3.6 grams of that is fiber. Whereas 8 ounces of orange juice contains 134 calories, 23 grams of sugar and only half a gram of fiber. An apple contains 65 calories, 13 grams of sugar and 3 grams of fiber, but an 8-ounce carton of apple juice will contain 114 calories, 24 grams of sugar and 0.5 grams of fiber. Now, we love fiber. Fiber is marvelous for three main reasons. It reduces the rate of intestinal carbohydrate absorption, which reduces your insulin response. That means it's slowing down the way your intestines are taking up the sugars that you eat. And it stops that yo-yo up and down with your blood sugar. It does also increase the speed of your transit of the intestinal contents to the ileum, and that's going to raise your satiety hormone and tell you to stop eating. And it also inhibits the absorption of some free fatty acids to the colon, which are then metabolized by the colonic bacteria to create short chain fatty acids which suppress insulin. So you can see that when we remove fiber from the sweet foods and then consume them, there is nothing to slow down the rate at which your intestines absorb the sugar. That makes your insulin response very high. Your satiety hormone doesn't kick in like it's supposed to, so you eat more than you should, and you are left without the necessary colonic bacteria to suppress insulin. So what are your alternatives? These days, there are all kinds of alternatives to sugar at the grocery store shelves. We are inundated with promises of the next best solution to sugar. They're marketed as options that contain all the sweetness without any of the guilt or the calories. Most things that look too good to be true usually are. So let's take a look at a few, and then you can make a decision about which one you feel is the best for you. That brings us to artificial sweeteners. Known as Splenda, NutraSweet, Equal, and Sweet and Low, these chemically created sweeteners come with side effects and long-term health consequences. In fact, sweeteners account for 75% of the negative food reactions created by food additives. They've been reported to cause upwards of 90 symptoms, including headaches, changes in vision, insomnia, hallucinations, memory loss, joint pain, and hives, even seizures and death. They've also been associated with multiple sclerosis, ALS, Parkinson's disease, dementia, and Alzheimer's. Erythritol, xylitol, sorbitol, and all the other words that end with "ol" are probably sugar alcohols. Now, the brands that you might see at the grocery store are Swerve and Pure Cane. Although you're also going to see bags of pure erythritol for use in baking. Sugar alcohols are also added to stevia and monk fruit to make them more palatable in baking. Now, while sugar alcohols contain no calories and do not spike your insulin levels, they can cause serious gastrointestinal side effects like diarrhea, bloating, and pain. Erythritol is also used as an insecticide and can upset the balance of bacteria in your digestive tract. High levels in your bloodstream can lead to weight gain. All of these things combined, sugar alcohols are a hard pass for me. I really don't like the effect that they have on your body. Allulose is relatively new to the market. It is a rare sugar. It's actually a real sugar. It's found in raisins, figs, and jackfruit, but it's in such small amounts. That's why they call it a rare sugar. It's a monosaccharide or single sugar that is not metabolized by your body. So it tastes sweet, but you don't absorb it, and that means that the USDA will classify it as a zero-calorie food. Now, manufacturers claim that it tastes like sugar, it bakes and freezes like sugar, it's diabetes friendly, and then the claim is that it starts in nature. With very few gastrointestinal side effects, people are pretty excited about this. It's being touted as the next best thing to sugar alcohols and way better than table sugar. But a little bit of digging on Tate & Lyle's website revealed that this sugar is made from corn, probably genetically modified corn, because that's where most of our corn products come from in the USA. They break it down into starch and fructose, and then they convert the fructose into allulose via enzymatic conversion processes using enzymes from genetically engineered microbes. Because of that manufacturing process and their use of genetically modified corn, I would personally skip this product. It might start in nature, but whatever they do to it along the way really adulterates it, and the fact that it's so associated with genetically modified corn is enough for me to also give this one a miss. Stevia and monk fruit are both plant-based sweeteners that have been used for thousands of years without incident. They are both approximately 200 times sweeter than sugar, so they work like a sweetener does. You use the same amounts, right? Just a tiny little bit. I think both of them have an aftertaste that's kind of similar to a artificial sweetener as well, although the Sweet Leaf brand now claims that they've made improvements in their processing and in their product that means that that bitter aftertaste is gone. The manufacturing process of these products can make them as bad for you as artificial sweeteners. Sweet Leaf Stevia is an organic version. It's made right here in Gilbert, Arizona. It's cold pressed with purified water, and it avoids any chemicals, solvents, or alcohols in the extraction process. PureAssure, P-U-R-I-S-U-R-E, makes a monk fruit extract that's 100% pure and free from any added sugar alcohols. According to their staff, it contains no heavy metals or hazardous microbials, and it is also grown without the use of pesticides and herbicides, although it is not labeled as organic. Agave syrup contains more fructose than high fructose corn syrup, and we've spent years getting rid of high fructose corn syrup, so don't replace it with agave syrup. This high amount of fructose can lead to weight gain, obesity, and we know that it causes damage to your liver. Now, it was touted as a healthy alternative for a long time because it doesn't spike blood sugar levels and it does have a low glycemic index. However, it's higher in calories than sugar, and it does not contribute to a healthy lifestyle. Coconut sugar looks like brown sugar, and it is made from coconut palm sap. That sap is heated until most of the water is evaporated from it, and only the sugar remains. It retains all of its vitamins and minerals, such as iron and zinc, calcium and potassium, as well as short-chain fatty acids and antioxidants. It contains about the same amount of calories as table sugar, and it may have a slightly lower glycemic index. There's only a couple of studies out there. One of them showed that it had a glycemic index, which is how much sugar food raises your blood sugar levels. It had a low medium glycemic index compared to table sugar, but a different report showed that it actually had the same glycemic index level as table sugar. It is generally advised in the nutrition world that you treat it the same as table sugar. So if you want to use it, that's fine. But as we'll talk about in a few minutes, just use it in moderation. Imagine you have a budget for it and you're including it in your budget for the day. Honey and maple syrup are natural sweeteners that start with plants, either with pollen from a flower or with the sap of a tree. So if I'm going to use these products, I purchase raw, unfiltered, organic honey, or a local honey that meets all of those criteria, even better, or pure maple syrup. Both honey and maple syrup have a similar glycemic index to table sugar, meaning that when you ingest them, they are going to raise your blood sugar. Honey consists mostly of fructose, whereas maple syrup is mostly made up of sucrose or table sugar. Neither one of these is very low calorie or a low glycemic index option. They will raise your blood sugar. However, we also know that honey can be medicinal in small quantities. Local honey is great at helping with allergies or with a sore throat. You can put a little bit in some warm water and drink that, sip at it. But we also know that there's a specific honey called Manuka honey that comes from the tea tree pollen, usually found in Australia. And the medicinal properties of the tea tree wind up in the Manuka honey. And so you can take that honey because it will soothe the sore throat, it will kill off the bacteria, it's got an antiseptic property to it. It may also slow down the growth of bacteria that causes H. pylori. And this week I just learned that it is also beneficial for people who have been going through chemo or radiation for throat cancer, where they've got sores in their mouth and that kind of thing. It can be very healing to just kind of suck on the honey and let it dissolve in their mouth, and can hopefully bring them some relief. So what are the next steps that you can take? What's the answer? What can you do to control your blood sugar and cut your risk of diabetes and metabolic syndrome almost completely? Well, the answer is simple, but it's not always easy because it's going to take some self-discipline. Some steps that you can take include counting how many grams of sugar you're taking in during the day and reducing it to 8 to 16 grams or 2 to 4 teaspoons a day. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I use this like a budget. So I don't completely keep sugar out of my diet, but I do keep it within this guideline. You want to cut out foods, processed foods that are high in sugars like cookies and cakes and breads and pies, or if you decide to enjoy those, do it knowing how much that contributes to your added sugars for the day. Commit to eating your carbohydrates with fiber, your sugars with fiber, because we know fiber is going to slow down the rate at which you absorb the sugars, and it's going to help you feel full sooner so you won't overeat. We suggest you wait 20 minutes before you go back for seconds, whether that's pie or cake or anything else. Give that satiety hormone of yours time to kick in so that it will tell you that you're full and allow it to do that. Cut out your sugary drinks. Commit to drinking water, coconut water, prickly pear, cactus water, or herbal tea instead. I really do save those treat drinks, and not even then, but really for just like major holidays and birthdays, but the rest of the year I don't bother with them at all. Cut out your candy, or go for a stevia sweetened candy instead, or count it again in your budget for the day. Do cut out sugar-free anything, because those sweetened with artificial sweeteners are even more toxic than regular sugar. If you're going to use sugar, use organic, raw sugar so that you know it's not genetically modified, and use it in incredibly limited quantities. Replace the sugar with organic stevia or monk fruit wherever you can. Lastly, move your body. Exercise is so important, not just because it burns calories, but because it improves your skeletal muscle insulin sensitivity. This is because it reduces stress and the resulting cortisol release. When stress is reduced, obesity goes down. It will also make your Krebs cycle run faster, which actually detoxifies fructose and improves your liver insulin sensitivity. Then the enzymes in your liver are not going to get the chance to make the citrates that create that VLDL cholesterol that is so bad for your heart health. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you've learned a ton about sugar and that you're able to make some educated and informed choices about what's right for you.